Hello, college football fans. Welcome to episode 132 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined, as always, by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, college football fans and celebratory Husker fans.
That's right, a bit of a change of pace from the past few weeks of this podcast.
Yes.
So for those of you out there who may be listening to the podcast for the first time, we're College Football Throwdown, a college football podcast by college football fans for college football fans. We are a father-son duo here today to talk about our favorite team, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, as well as the wider world of college football. We'll be getting into some of the big coaching shakeups that have happened in the landscape as well. But before we dive into all of that, we're going to stick with our tradition and open up a cold beverage. I have my last of the Kona Big Wave Golden Ale, Kona Brewing Company beers here.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so your mother was just giving me a hard time about the fact that I don't have anything cold, but my favorites, and I'm running really, really short on this. I have just a few of the my favorite beer from the Southwest, the Kilt Lifter Scottish Style Amber Ale from Four Peaks Brewing Company in Tempe, Arizona. But I'm gonna sacrifice one right here, right now.
Sacrifice one for the greater good.
For the greater good. Yep. Even though I'm tired and it might put me to sleep. So you might have to shout at the end of this podcast.
All right, I'll work on that. Here
Alrighty.
we go.
Yep.
All right. So yes, to kick things off, we'll be talking about Nebraska's game against Indiana, which we were talking about on last week's podcast and emphasizing its importance because if we couldn't beat this team at home, the rest of our season was looking real dark and dim. And thankfully, we were able to pull out the W. It was an ugly win, but it was a win nonetheless of 35-21. We gave our predictions on the last podcast, and we both predicted a win. I said 35-31. You said 41-31. So I was pretty close. I got our score right, but Indiana scored 10 less than I anticipated. I think we both kind of expected to be more of a offensive battle, and really it was more defensive on both sides. Both offenses really struggled to get things going at certain points.
Well, and both teams were guilty of in many cases, shooting themselves in the foot with penalties. Both teams had double-digit penalties. It was the most penalized game in the Big Ten this season, and Nebraska had 12 penalties and they had 11.
Yeah.
At Indiana.
Yeah.
So it was just foul ball
for 111 yards and 92, so 200 combined yards of penalties.
Yeah. Well, that'll take down your offense a notch.
Yeah, definitely. And some of those, I should say that I listened to the first half basically on the radio and then was able to watch the full second half. And it sounded like some of them were a bit ticky-tack, like, on the fence. But the majority were, kind of more blatant. And so, it was not a disciplined game on either side.
Right. There was some definite pass interference penalties that they called, and they legitimately were. But I would, I always argue on pass interference because of how inconsistently that particular rule is interpreted, from group, or I should say, what do I want to say?
Conference.
Well, not just even conference, but definitely conferences too. Yes, the term I'm looking for is crews. The refereeing crew. From one crew to another, how they tend to interpret and call that just can change. But so as a team, you have to adjust early in the game if they're calling them tight. And if you're not getting called, you almost have to start testing the boundaries and see how far you can go with physicality, because some crews will, call ticky-tack stuff and others won't. You have to mug them before they'll call it.
Right. Yeah. That is an annoying part of the game. I will say there was a there was that great tackle by one of our guys that caused the fumble, and that particular player got injured off of that hit, and they
Yes.
started to review it for targeting,
Right.
which, I can understand why they took a second look at it, but I was gonna throw a fit if they actually called it, because it was clearly not. He hit him shoulder to
Below.
shoulder.
Yeah. Shoulder
Yeah,
to shoulder.
no,
Yep.
no head contact, no leading with the head. Right, it was all below the head, and thankfully they made the right call. They didn't throw the flag on that,
Right.
because hits like that in college football have become rarer these days.
Well, and honestly, that could have easily been a targeting call if that uh, uh, offensive player had simply lowered his body, his torso. Anymore, I don't know how you're supposed to tackle without doing that. When the offensive player can choose to lower their body, okay, well, you were targeting their body, and then they lowered their head into your trajectory. I don't see how that's the defense's fault. See, and so that's an element of that whole definition of that rule that to me needs to change. There has to be circumstances where if an offensive player is running forward or toward the defender, and chooses to lower their body, their trajectory to get low, because that's how you get leverage, then you can't call that targeting, because he was not targeting the head. That was an inadvertent collision of the head. I think that that's an easily interpretable thing, as easy as interpreting on any other element of that stupid rule, which is all interpretation. So why can't you add in language that says the exception to the targeting rule is if this player is lowering their body or lowering their torso to prepare for contact, then targeting is off the table, because now that offensive player is doing as much to target with his head as the defensive player.
Right.
So I have a problem with that.
Right. Yeah.
Not to get sidetracked on a policy or issue.
Right. Yeah. I get that their purpose of it is to just try to have coaches tell players, don't lead with your head, no matter
Right.
what. Right. Try to avoid that. Because yes, there have been many situations where I've also thought that the offensive player, lowered themselves down, and sure, when you look at it slow motion, right, it looks kind of bad, but in the moment, that's a split second thing that defender
Absolutely.
has no time to react to.
I totally agree, and you're right, and it has worked, quote quote, worked in quotes, in that it has changed the way coaches teach tackling, but it has not improved tackling. It has made tackling worse, and I think, generally speaking, the game has been lowered in quality because of those rules changes. Now, have they saved some concussions? I don't have the data to look at, and so I'm gonna assume they have. Otherwise, they wouldn't have kept the rules. If they were continuing to see as many, head injuries and neck injuries and things like that, you would think they would have changed the rules. So since they haven't, that leads me to believe that they must be seeing fewer. But I don't have those data points. But as I watch the sport, I think the quality of proper tackling technique is deteriorated during this period of time in the sport, not improved. Right. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Diving into the stats of the game,
yeah,
Nebraska had.
I was going to say, let's talk about a victory, huh?
Yeah, let's talk about a W. That sounds fun. Nebraska had 22 first downs to their 14, 115 yards of rushing on 51 attempts to their 67 yards rushing on 23 attempts. We had 270 total yards of passing, while they had 223, which led to total offense of 385 versus 290 for the teams. We already mentioned the penalties. And then both teams threw an interception, and we also had a fumble in there. So we were actually -1 on the turnover ratio.
Right.
And both teams got some sacks. Looks like 4 for them, 3 for us. but we had a significant advantage in terms of time of possession, 35
Yes.
minutes to 25. And we're also better on third downs, 7 of 16 versus 2 of 15.
Way better. So the two things that I would say you can draw out of that is the third down conversions was huge. Our defense did a great job of not allowing them to convert third downs, and their whole offense is predicated on converting third downs. Because remember the previous game they played, they had 104 plays.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they had about, what is it, 65 or 70 plays in this game. So they had 35 fewer plays in this game than they did the previous week. So by not allowing those third down conversions, you don't allow them to march it down the field and, do what they want to do on offense, which is excellent.
Yep.
The hidden stat that you're not seeing on that, you see a part of it, a hint to it in the time of possession, right? We have a huge time of possession advantage. Well, you got to relook at that rushing total. What was that number again? Just give that to me real quick.
For us, it was 51 rushes for 115 yards.
Yeah. Okay. We did way better than that, right? What's hidden in that is that our quarterbacks collectively took some god awful sacks, including one getting sacked in the end zone for a touchdown for our Indiana, when he would have just taken a safety, but he decided that he was going to let the ball go too. So if you remove all those negative yards, and there were massive, I think it was like 45 or 50 yards. So instead of that 115, that would have been about 165 or 170 of actual, positive yards from scrimmage running the football.
That's right.
If you take away the sacks.
So they had 4 sacks on us for 48 yards. We had 3 for 26. So you're correct. That was definitely a significant amount.
Yeah. And so because one of the things that got me most excited about this game, and I also I watched a good portion of the first half, and then missed a little bit of the third quarter, but then have since watched it a couple of times, and there was clearly a number of missed opportunities throughout the game that frustrated the heck out of me. But the thing I was really, really pleased with was not the first touchdown drive of the fourth quarter, but the second touchdown drive. After we had taken a 28-21 lead, we then got that ball back and we drove the length of the field running the football with some pretty darn good blocking. And Anthony Grant was just a workhorse. And, he was getting every yard. He was trying so hard. He was fired up and, averaging about probably 8 yards a carry, right, on that drive. And it was brilliant. And we did mix in some pass plays and stuff when we got in closer to the end zone for whatever reason. We even though we were having great success running the football, on one play they stopped us for like only a 1 yard gain, and then we went to the passing game and passed, but it worked and we got into the end zone. But the more important thing was, because we had done all that running on that drive, we consumed a number of minutes off the clock. I'm going to say 3.5 or 4 minutes of time of possession, and we physically, beat on them, right? And and then when you can get the payoff, when you get that touchdown, now you're up 14 points. That was huge. Nebraska has not been able to do that since Scott Frost's first year, when we still had, oh gosh, his name is escaping me. Our last really great running back, who ended up going to the NFL for a few years too. Or help me with his name.
Amir?
No, definitely well after Amir. But anyway, I'll think of it. Okay. I'll think of his name. But bottom line is
Burkhead. No, he was a
nope. No.
That's
Burkhead was before Amir.
I'm keep going back.
Yeah, you're going the wrong way. But anyway, we had a great running back in Scott's first year, and one we could rely on. But we didn't figure that out until like the third or fourth game of the year. But regardless, the point is we just haven't had that kind of running capability until I saw a glimpse of it, just a glimpse, in this Indiana game, at times earlier in the game, but especially in the fourth quarter.
Right. we talked on the last podcast about how the defensive coordinator, Eric Shenander, had been fired after the tough loss to Oklahoma, and Bill Bush, our special teams coordinator, was promoted to defensive coordinator. And we had a bye week going into this. We had extra time than usual to prepare. And you could see that it definitely helped on the defensive side of the ball. The fact that we were able to contain this Indiana team that, is a very fast-paced team and was able to put up points against other teams in their season. And frankly, the game should have been way further in the lead because one of their touchdowns was off of that sack in the end zone when Chuba Purdy came in for one series that gave them an easy touchdown. And then they had a nice drive to score near the end of the second quarter, and we just needed to run a few plays to run out the clock. Couldn't do that, gave them the ball back, and they scored quickly on our tired defense, leaving it tied up 21-21 going into the half, which had me, as I was driving back home, very concerned. I'm like, oh boy, this is how things are going to go downhill for us, right? Because we had outperformed them significantly in that first half, yet it was a tie game. But thankfully, the defense came out and performed even better in the second half, stuffed them from getting any points, as it turns out. And we were able to get a easy score of our own off of a special teams play, which was great to see.
Well, that was in the first half, though. That special teams
that's true.
Score was in that first half. The two scores in the second half were on a huge pass play, a 71-yard pass play that we had early in the fourth quarter. That kind of changed the momentum of things, but then we followed that up, and that was the key. The very next drive, we took the ball down the field, we marched it down there and burn up clock, and then got a 14-point lead, and then we were cooking with gas.
Right. And I know one other thing that we talked about last week was the depth chart. Right. And we were wondering, will they be more willing to substitute players than we had seen under the Scott Frost, Eric Shenander kind of leadership? And definitely seemed like we were. I saw new faces out there. And the fact that they pulled Casey Thompson, right, for a drive after he had that intentional grounding, right, that was pretty bad. Now that kind of backfired because Chuba Purdy didn't do anything and then fumbled it in the end zone. But I think psychologically it may have helped Casey because I feel like he kind of was able to figure some things out later on.
Well, and I'm not sure if that happened during the game, but it is a major point of conversation today on the Monday following the game because both he and Coach Joseph were, of course, made available to the media today. Right, this is their normal Monday press conference day, and they both talked about it quite significantly, including the fact that Casey went into Coach Joseph's office and had a conversation with him about it and let him know, I don't like that you took me out. Okay, so. And it's interesting because it gives us a little insight into the relationship. Now, keep in mind that Mickey and Casey, they've known each other since Casey was a child, because Casey's dad, Charles Thompson, was an Oklahoma quarterback, same vintage, same era as Mickey at Nebraska. So they knew each other all the way going back to competing against each other in college. Okay. And they had apparently stayed in contact. So he knew Casey, he has a pretty deep relationship with Casey Thompson. It's one of the reasons why Casey ended up at Nebraska, right? So, but the bottom line is kind of neat that he feels confident enough that he can go into his head coach and say, hey, I didn't like the fact that you took me out. But then Coach Joseph sat him down and said, hey, here's why. Number one, we need to protect you a little bit, and you're getting banged up, and when you're making decisions like that, okay, when you're making negative decisions like the intentional grounding, guess what? I'm going to pull you, because sometimes it's better for you to be on the sidelines, get yourself together, and let some of these other guys play, because as beat up as you are getting, there's a very good chance I'm going to need those two guys, right? Those second and third team quarterbacks. So you got to get used to that. It's probably going to happen again. So I love that whole dynamic, that whole relationship and that conversation could happen, right? I'm not sure that happens with Scott.
Right. No, that is interesting to hear. I wasn't aware that their relationship went back that far.
Yeah.
But I have written down here as one of my notes that I'm predicting right now that Casey Thompson will not make it this full season without getting pulled out at some point, for a full game or two or something, because he's already been into that injury tent, several times, been sacked. Now he came out of that injury tent, right, and threw some beautiful passes like that 70-yard pass that you mentioned. I screamed extra loud when that happened, I can tell you what.
Yeah.
So, he's shown, obviously, we've seen it already in these games, how great of a thrower he can be. But then he also sometimes misses guys, that are like the easy passes,
Right.
he sometimes misses, or overthrows somebody who is open deep and things like that.
And this week's going to be a real test because, number one, you're going against a Greg Schiano defense, and Greg and the Rutgers team, they're going to be known for defense because Greg Schiano's a defensive guy. Okay, he's an old school defensive coordinator and has been very good pretty much everywhere he's been, right? So you can count on the fact that they're going to be well schooled, and they're going to be fully aware of the laundry list of little injuries that Casey's already had, and this is again a mistake, and I'm hopeful that Mickey has already talked to him about today's press conference. Number one, he probably shouldn't have been sharing as much information as he was, and particularly he shared details of pretty much every injury he's had this season. And so now that defensive coordinator knows exactly where to hit him. That he's had, an injury to his elbow, he went through it. It's like six different things. And it's like, you don't ever share that. Never, ever, ever share that.
Right.
Unless you want to be hurt and if you don't want to play, then go ahead and share that information because that's what's going to happen. You idiot. That was just dumb. It really was. That's dumb. That's a rookie move. And the fact that he wasn't previously told or coached that that's the kind of stuff you do not share. And here's why. If I'm a defensive coordinator and I know that this guy has a sore shoulder, I'm going after that shoulder, right? I'm going to drive him into the ground as hard as I can on that bad shoulder. I'm going to do everything I can. He's got a wrist injury. I'm going after that wrist, right? I'm going to swing at that wrist. I'm going to hit that wrist. I'm going to do everything I can to hurt that wrist. Okay? That's my job, right? So I want to get him out of the game. I don't want to kill him. I don't want to ruin his career, but I want to injure him enough that he chooses not to come back out and compete against me. Right. And players need to understand that, especially a quarterback.
Right. And once again, he's a junior, right? He's transferring in as a junior. That's the sort of thing you might expect a freshman to say, but you have higher standards for a junior.
Yeah, absolutely. And he is the son of a Division I quarterback. He should have known that. He should have been, you know what I mean? His football
should have known that in the crib.
IQ, right. His football IQ should have been way high. No, before he end of his 7th grade year, that should have been something he was already aware of because he was already getting media attention. You know that because he was Oklahoma's star quarterback's son, right? So I just that's something that happened today in the press conference that does bother me and I view as a negative. But since we're talking about a victory, I really want to focus on the positive things about that game. I feel like in that fourth quarter, we learned something about our offensive line. Throughout the game, we learned some things about our defense. I think our defense has just begun to learn how to play defense. Like they were being told how to kind of go through motions, but they were never allowed to actually play defense under the previous regime. I genuinely believe that to be true. And so what does Coach Bush do when he gets in there? He didn't change a lot of language. He doesn't change a lot of things. But we went way, way more aggressive. We were playing man coverage a lot against Indiana. Now there was a matchup reason for that, and this is why we can't overreact to this victory. Is that Indiana their two top receivers, okay, on a team that lives and dies by their passing game, their short passing game, their two top receivers were both out against us. They didn't play. So they were playing with inexperienced receivers in an offense that requires, your receivers to be good, right? And so we lucked out in that whole matchup thing. And I don't know what their status is, whether they'll be back, because Indiana has to play Michigan this week. So they better strap up the chin straps, because they could get housed really bad if they play like they did against us. But anyway, my point is that our defensive line played and with aggression and had penetration, and we were getting into the backfield and getting sacks, things that we just weren't seeing earlier. And then because we were playing man up, we were able to be more aggressive in terms of adding pressure to the package, because we were counting on those receivers. I mean, even the analysts were saying, hey, these guys on the outside, there's nobody behind them. There's no safety help. They are one-on-one, So that quarterback just needed to get them the ball, and they could have had big play after big play against us, but they just didn't get it done.
Right. And part of that also was that, their quarterback, isn't like the type of the top tier type of quarterback, right? Like we face with Oklahoma and stuff.
Correct.
Because there were some plays where a pass would, just go off the hands of a receiver, be overthrown, right? Where they were open, and there were positive yards to be made, and their quarterback just didn't execute.
That is correct. You are exactly right. And so I don't know if we can afford to be that aggressive this week like we were this past week against Indiana when we go up to Rutgers. I mean, I think a different strategy and a different game plan is going to have to be implemented. If we try to do the same thing, I fear we probably won't have the same level of success. But the fact that we're playing more freely, that the system has been simplified, I think is a huge plus. And has opened the players' eyes to, okay, we can do this. We do have more talent than we've been showing. And that's the aha moment that we need those guys to do. And then they just need to keep working hard and playing for each other. And maybe they can string together a few victories here, until we get back into the heavy lifting part of the schedule.
Right. Because like I shared with you the video of Trev Albers and Mickey Joseph and the whole team, celebrating in the locker room afterwards. And Trev gave Mickey the game ball. And, it was great to see that, just because these kids have had a very tough start to their season. And for the older players, it's been a tough career at Nebraska under Scott Frost. So it's great just to see that energy. What I'm looking for in this Rutgers game is for us to cut down significantly on the penalties. I want to see a more cleaned up, more disciplined version of what we saw, for sure. And then to your point as well, continued success, continued evolution on defense, right? Like we know for a fact that Mickey and Bill are having there be more contact in practice, right, than there was under Scott Frost. And I think we saw some of the dividends of that in this game. So I'm hoping to see more of that in the weeks to come.
I totally agree with you. And on offense, our offensive line, we had to shuffle some things around because one of our offensive linemen got ejected on, frankly, some pretty questionable, personal foul penalties that led to his ejection for supposedly punching a guy when all he really did was just shove him. So one of our starting left tackle got ejected from the game. That's a big deal. And so we had to shuffle personnel around, and I felt like the offensive line was playing at its best in the fourth quarter. So if we can start to figure out, okay, we've gotten some snaps for these guys, we have more confidence in them, we can rotate things a little bit more. I think they're going to eventually discover the best five to have out there on the offensive line that can actually start to play as a unit. And if they can do that, we have the running back and the wide receiver quarterback threat to make our offense pretty effective. But we need that offensive line to come together. Otherwise, it's nothing. Because Case is going to get crushed, as will Purdy and, every one of our quarterbacks.
Right.
I mean, we need that offensive line to get its shit together.
Very true. Very true. So do you want to preview the Rutgers game now or save that for the end?
Let's see here. Let's go ahead and preview that now. But I want to take one moment to talk about something you just mentioned, which was the locker room thing that has been, shared with a lot of people. Trev Albers and giving the game ball. Now, that's a tradition that goes back forever. That when a new coach gets his first victory, they get the game ball, right? And so that's cool, and I'm glad that was able to happen. Like you said, it was great to see that energy and that enthusiasm in the locker room. There are a lot of happy faces there. But it has since occurred to me, as I was reading things and stuff, I had known that Trev Albers and Mickey were somewhat close in age, but I didn't realize that they overlapped at the exact same time, that they were in fact teammates for a couple of years at Nebraska. I did not know that. I had, for whatever reason, my perception is that Mickey was older than that and that Trev was after him. But actually, in Trev's probably freshman and sophomore years, and maybe even junior, I don't know if it's 2 or 3 years, but Trev was a young player on the team that Mickey Joseph was the starting quarterback. He was the man. So they have a relationship and a connection that's deeper than I realized.
Mm-hmm. We're uncovering all sorts of these Mickey Joseph connections, it seems.
Right. Well, exactly. And that makes me think that, Trev would like nothing more than for Mickey to be able to turn this thing around, and for the two of them as a cohort, as an AD and head coach, the two most important people in any major athletic department because of the money involved. I could see those two really working well together. I think Trev understands the importance of recruiting. Mickey definitely does. Billy Bush definitely does. So, I mean, you already got a little grouping there of people that get it, right? Have Nebraska connections, have deep passion for the school. I mean, so if you're going to hire a guy that doesn't have a bunch of Power 5 success and experience that he brings to the table with you, this might be the guy. You know what I mean? Or at a minimum, if he does moderately well, you find a way to keep him interested and then give your new coach that you do hire a strong sales pitch to say, hey, this is a guy and this is a guy that you might want to keep around because of all these reasons, Yep. And maybe they end up giving, Mickey doesn't get the head coaching job, but he gets the associate head coaching job and a huge pay bump, you know?
Yep. We brought that up last week as well as the one potential scenario that could play out.
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
So anyway, that's just some deep relationship stuff that kind of showed up in that video. You could just see it.
Mm-hmm. Now, talking about Rutgers, interestingly, they're coming off of 2 losses. The first against Iowa, and then against Ohio State last week, where they lost 49-10. Now it is at Rutgers, so it's an away game for us, which will be a little more challenging for sure. But I am hopeful that we may be able to capitalize on the fact that they played like 3 kind of. I think they beat Boston College in their first game, which is a solid win, and then beat 2 kind of nobodies, and then lost to Iowa and Ohio State.
Right.
So their team morale might be a little bit low right now, whereas we're, obviously at the highest point we've been this season so far. So I'm hoping that we can take that energy and score early, right, like we did in this game. Actually, I think it was mentioned on the radio call that we've scored on the first possession like 4 of the 5 games we've played so far. So that's actually something we've been good at. We haven't been good at sustaining it, though. So I'd like to see us score early and then keep up the pressure, and ideally, get a good lead so that by the 4th quarter, maybe we could even sub Casey out, right, and just kind of coast to the W.
Man, that's dreaming.
I know.
You are. No, that's good. That's future perfect scenario. That's the way it used to be. But I would agree with you. That's what we would want to see happen. And I would mention one other thing that along that same line. Rutgers has played not just anybody, but they've played Iowa and Ohio State in back-to-back weeks, two very, very physical defenses, right? So they're going to come into this game kind of beat up, I would expect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know how many guys they had sitting out. Maybe they were looking at the Ohio State game and saying, we're not likely to win that anyway, so let's make sure that we're getting as healthy as we can for the run for the rest of the season, right? So sometimes a coach will maybe lay back a little bit on the whole play or not play a player based on how he sees the season unfolding, right? And so we'll see how many. Like there were 4 or 5 of their starters at Rutgers that were held out last week because they were injured.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how many of those 4 or 5 guys end up not just suiting up, but actually coming back and starting and playing for us against Nebraska? And if they do, well, that could change the whole dynamic of what, Rutgers is as a football team. So we'll see. But I would agree with you that we should go in there with optimism and with positive energy. The real question is, how are our practices going to be this week? Are these guys, still, are they able to do the 24-hour rule? Like Mickey talked about and most coaches talk about, you get 24 hours to celebrate your victory, right? And then it's back to work on the next game. Well, that's easier said than done, especially it's been a long time since you won. Sometimes you tend to think like, okay, we've turned that corner. All right, yeah. But then you go out and you lay an egg in the first practice of the week preparing for the next game. And made even worse by the fact that this game is already a shortened week because it's a Friday night game instead of a Saturday game, right? So everything is pulled forward. Everything is more urgent. And were they able to, have a good practice or not? And, of course, if they have a bad one, Mickey isn't necessarily going to share that with the media until after we get our ass kicked on Friday. And then he's going to be like, yeah, well, we had some troubles this week, that type of thing. So I'm hopeful that we didn't have that bounce. Instead, we had a real positive bounce, and the guys were fired up and ready to, let's do this again. Let's get better. Let's get better every day.
Yeah. I just did a quick bit of research, and it seems like Rutgers' starting quarterback, I believe, got injured not in the Ohio State game, but earlier in the season. So I guess they've been kind of rotating guys, trying to find who's the best fit. So that may be an area where we can capitalize if we are able to keep up that aggressive defensive style, right? Get some sacks, get some pressure back there. I think we could see some success with that.
And keep in mind that Noah Vedral is still one of those quarterbacks, the ex-Nebraska quarterback who we are familiar with, right? So Noah is still in the mix and, in fact, played against Ohio State.
Okay, that is something to keep in mind.
Yes.
So I'm going to go ahead and predict, despite my earlier optimism, I don't think we'll get into such a big lead in the fourth quarter, as I said. But I do think that we will be able to win, and hopefully with a solid score. Because we've talked a lot about the defense in this podcast for obvious reasons, because they showed great improvement in this game. But I'm also really hoping to see the offense show more consistency, right? We had some great drives in that game, but we also had lots of 3-and-outs and kind of, penalties and intentional groundings and stuff like that. So I really want to see that area of the ball, that side of the ball cleaned up. And I think if we can do that, we can get out to that early lead. So I'm going to say that Nebraska ends up winning, let's say, 45 to Rutgers 28.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go slightly different. I'm also going to predict a Nebraska victory because I'm optimistic as well. And frankly, if we don't win this game, I'm not sure we're winning another one this season, right? So it's we're in that mode at this point where every game we play is the next step on the mountain, right? We're just going to be climbing the mountain. Mm-hmm. And so it's do or die every week. And I hope that, and I believe Mickey will deliver that message to the team. Now, how well they embrace it and are able to, prepare for it, that's great. And I don't know what kind of crowd and home field advantage that Rutgers is going to have. It's a Friday night. It seems like that could be really rocking, right? I mean, a big time party. But I don't know. Maybe some regular fans won't be able to make it because they usually travel from further away. Just don't know. So I'm curious what kind of attendance and energy they're going to have in that stadium for them. But hopefully it won't be very good, and that'll be an advantage to us. So with that being said, I think we come out at least initially with some success, and if we can stay clean and stay more disciplined, as you said earlier, then I think we win the football game. But I don't think we score as many points as you were describing. I think we're going to win that game. If we're going to win that game, it's going to be a little bit like the one we had this week. I'm going to say a great score for me would be 35-21, just like this week. So I'm going to predict basically the exact same score as we had against Indiana, and that we score in the fourth quarter to get to that 14-point victory.
Right.
I think it's going to be hard fought.
Right. Well, I thought about that a little bit too, but I was like, if we're able to clean up the penalties and stuff, right, which is the big key to my prediction.
Yes.
I feel like we should have scored much more against Indiana, and the defense played good enough to stop them from scoring, right, if we hadn't had that, sack at the end zone and stuff like that.
Good point.
So I'm hoping that if we do clean that up and be more efficient, we'll be able to be better. Now, I may not be taking into account, like you mentioned, the Greg Schiano defense, right, that Rutgers defense is going to be better than Indiana's.
Yes.
So that may put a hole in my plan here, but
no, I love it. I would be thrilled if we had that kind of offensive production, because that would give me optimism again that the offensive line had made progress, and that because again, I look at what Whipple has done so far offensively, and I'm okay with it. There's a nice balance of run and pass there, and I don't love everything he does, but I get what he's trying to do.
Yeah. No, yeah. I wouldn't say the play calling hasn't been a major concern of mine, aside from what I've mentioned before about how sometimes we go for the deep ball, like on first down and stuff like that, when I'd prefer we just focus on getting the first down. So that'd be my one critique.
Yep. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. All right. So now before we dive into the big games from week 5, which there were quite a few interesting games worth talking about, well, I guess we should start with the Wisconsin game, which leads into the next piece of news, where Wisconsin, darn, I actually didn't write it down. Who did they play last week?
Illinois. And
that's right.
Brett Bielema, who was their ex-coach, right?
Right. So, yeah, there's some interesting history there.
Yeah.
That's right. So it was a 34-10 win for Illinois. Ugly game for Wisconsin, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, against
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, against the team. Yeah, that's not considered to be that good. And then it was announced. I saw fans complaining about Paul Chryst, their coach, in like the threads I was seeing on Reddit. And then it was announced on Sunday that Wisconsin had fired him. They had fired Paul Chryst. The defensive coordinator, Jim Leonhard, is now the interim head. Leonard is the interim head coach. And an interesting stat actually is I looked up Paul Chryst's stats, his win-loss record. He was 67 wins to 26 losses. Very similar to our previous head coach, Bo Pelini, who was 67 wins and 27 losses. So,
right.
And a lot of people were even saying like that, he had like 3 years going to the championship like Bo did at earlier points in his career, et cetera, et cetera. So he's very comparable, except that Paul does not have the personality issues that Bo did.
Correct. Yeah. There was a bunch of off the field issues that drove the Bo Pelini decision. It wasn't necessarily his on field performance, although there were issues there too. But those weren't what got him fired. And you're right. And so you almost wonder, is there more stuff behind the scenes? And I think part of it is the athletic director at Wisconsin, who's only been there a couple of years because Barry Alvarez was there before. In this role, I think this guy had previously been at Wisconsin, this athletic director. But I think he was looking at it and saying, okay, I've got a guy on staff that I believe is our next head coach, and I do not want to lose him. And when his name started being bandied about, including the Nebraska job, right, then I think that athletic director recognized that, you know what, I need to make a decision here, or I'm going to lose my future head coach. And my current head coach is not getting it done. He's trending in a negative direction. And I can now look at Wisconsin has basically played all their tough games. You look at the rest of the games on their schedule, and there probably isn't a game that they would be an underdog in under normal circumstances, right? If they hadn't been, dumping it these last couple of weeks and underperforming, then everybody would look at the talent on that squad and say, this is a team that's going to win the rest of their games. So now he's giving this Leonard a runway in which he can start building positive momentum and be this great success story. Unlike Nebraska's situation with Mickey, where we have this huge hill to climb because we still have to play Michigan and Wisconsin and Iowa and Minnesota. All the quote, quote, tougher teams on our schedule are still out there in front of us. The ones that are traditionally not as difficult, like Northwestern and Indiana, are in our rearview mirror. Right.
Yeah.
So he's positioned for Leonard to build positive momentum. He's already regarded as one of the best young, coordinators in college football, and he's only like 38 or 39 years old, and he's a young guy. So you got a chance to be the man who puts this guy in charge of Wisconsin and then leads them to a 20-year run of continued success, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I think that AD was thinking.
I in the comments I saw talking about that decision, I think I saw some speculation similar to yours that this was partially based off of holding on to this defensive coordinator that everyone is thinking so highly of.
Right.
Interestingly, their big crossover game from the other side of the conference is Michigan State, who they're happy to catch in a year where they're struggling, right? So that's another one that's why definitely winnable.
Exactly. Yeah, they played Ohio State, got crushed, but that's behind them now, right? And this Illinois game is behind them. Now they still do need to play Minnesota. They always play them last game of the year, so that's going to be a tough game for them. But I mean, you could definitely see them going, 5-2 or 6-1 the remainder of the season if they right the ship. But here's the caveat, and this is the part that's a little bit of a head scratcher. His defense has not performed very well this year, right? I mean, he's had some good defenses in the past. In fact, he's led the country in defensive stats, in past years. But he gave up a half 100 to Ohio State, and then he gave up 34 to Illinois, right? So his defense ain't doing so great. So I think it's more than just offense problems at Wisconsin.
Right. Well, and it was making me think a little bit about Mel Tucker, right, who's at Michigan State, who was getting some national interest, and Michigan State paid a very hefty sum to lock him in for a more long-term contract. And now all of a sudden they're having a tough start to their year. So it's interesting how and we know that better than anybody with Scott Frost, right? So the star of the moment can quickly fade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Exactly.
Why don't you go ahead and talk about how you think this affects Nebraska's coaching search?
Okay, so I just pitched you the ideal scenario for Nebraska, which is that this athletic director did this in part or in large part so that he could do a nice long interview, so to speak, with this Leonard guy, and give him every opportunity to basically win the job, right? Now, assuming that goes the way he hopes it's going to go, then that doesn't affect us at all, right? Then Wisconsin's replacement isn't even really in the factor for what we're looking at. However, if instead the problems at Wisconsin go deeper than some might think, and their defense doesn't get better, their offense doesn't get better, maybe there's a little division on the team, because I think this has got to be a shock to some of those players, especially the players on offense, that things could not go so well for Wisconsin. Now what do you do? Okay, now you really don't want to give Leonard the job if he just went, 3-4 in a 7-game stretch where he probably should have won at least 5 of those 7 games, right?
Right.
So now what? Now what do you do?
Right.
So then you look to probably the Kansas coach, right? If he continues to have success, which he's already at 5-0, so I mean Leopold's going to get to 7, most likely 8 or more wins pretty easily, based on how he's been performing, how his team has been performing up to this point. So he's going to be a guy that is a commodity, and he is a Wisconsin native. Won 6 national championships at Division III University of Wisconsin Whitewater. He would be the golden boy coming home, and he's turned around Buffalo and turned around Kansas. So he's got a history, multiple years in multiple locations of Division I football. So he would be another candidate. That's where those two cross. That's where the Nebraska coaching search and the Wisconsin we might end up getting into a bidding war for a guy like Leopold or Aranda, who was also the defensive coordinator. In fact, this Leonard, he learned under Aranda. He played for Aranda at Wisconsin and then became an assistant coach under Aranda, right? Mm-hmm. So Dave Aranda is another guy that has huge, deep ties to Wisconsin. So I could see their athletic director going after Aranda. And I would be shocked, frankly, if they don't. If they don't go after Aranda, I don't care how much you think about Leonard. I still think you have to first make a call to Dave Aranda and say, "Hey, you want to come back to Wisconsin?" And if he said, "I'm interested," then you absolutely have that dialogue with him. And I don't give a damn what Leonard does.
Right. You go to the teacher first before you go to the pupil, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because the teacher isn't an old teacher. You know what I mean? He's not past his prime. He's absolutely in his prime. So I don't know why you would settle for, like you say, the pupil rather than the teacher, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So Dave Aranda is the other one that I think is in play with Wisconsin that could negatively affect who we might have wanted to try to go after. I don't know how much Aranda would have had interest in Nebraska. You know what I mean? I don't think he has any ties to the state of Nebraska. A little bit of his career is Big Ten related, but not a ton of it. So but the Wisconsin job, I think Aranda would be interested in. So it will not shock me if Dave Aranda ends up the Wisconsin coach.
Mm-hmm. Which would definitely make you sad that now we have to compete against the guy.
Absolutely. Because who was my guy? Who's my guy?
Aranda.
Exactly. So that would piss me off. So that's where this negatively affects us. But I'm hoping that all the early scuttlebutt says, "Oh yeah, we're going to let this Leonard guy have his debut here, and he's going to win 5 or 6 games out of these last 7, and we're going to be going bowling and looking great as the future, with a young, vibrant head coach."
All right. So going into the games from week 5, besides that Wisconsin game, this one was quite interesting. Georgia beat Missouri 26-22 in a game that, frankly, Missouri should have won. They had to settle for many, many field goals, including one where I think they got an interception or a big pass or something and got to the 1-yard line. And Georgia's defense still stopped them and forced them to kick the field goal. So if Mizzou was just getting touchdowns instead of field goals, they easily win that game. Right. Georgia kind of like Alabama against Texas, right? They got out of there with a win in a game where they didn't play well.
Yep. Well, and they were losing, right? I mean, Georgia was losing until 3 or 4 minutes left in the game, right? I mean, it was Missouri's game, and even with all the mistakes they did make, it was still a very good chance they could win it if they just could hold them out. But Georgia's offense finally woke up and did its thing in that fourth quarter.
Pretty much. Another interesting one was one that we predicted last week, which was Oklahoma State Baylor, right? Speaking of Dave Aranda.
Yes.
And you predicted that Baylor would win that game 45-41, whereas I predicted that Oklahoma State, being at home, would manage to pull out the win of 35-28, and the final score ended up being 36-25. So I was pretty darn close there.
You were not darn close. You were dead on, man. That's a dead on situation. You got it.
I'd say so.
Well, and frankly, that probably increases the chances that Dave Aranda is going to be willing to talk to Wisconsin or us if we reached out, because all of a sudden, Dave Aranda's got 2 losses, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
no? They have 2 losses already. But anyway, yeah, I think they have 2 losses. So, their season isn't playing out as good as they thought it was going to.
No, that's true. Yeah, and I did watch the recap of that particular game on YouTube. And I'm not remembering a lot of the details right now, but I think Baylor did make some mistakes, like with some turnovers and stuff that kind of let Oklahoma State get some of their huge plays, big yard plays, and everything going. And you are correct. Baylor also lost to BYU in overtime.
That's what it was. Yes.
Earlier in the season.
Yes. And they struggled to beat Iowa State. You know what I mean? Like they have not been blowing people's doors off or anything.
That's very true.
So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. This one was interesting in the SEC. Mississippi State versus Texas A&M, 42-24. Texas A&M, who's seeming to have this very up and down season so far. I know a lot of people are getting upset with Jimbo Fisher over there. I do have to say, though, I watched the recap of that particular game, too, and I do not want to go to a Mississippi State game, I think, because they're constantly ringing those bells, out in the stands on like every play.
Cowbells.
The cowbells.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. I think that would drive me nuts.
Yep. Yeah, that is. Well, and I think they have to get some kind of special dispensation because it's kind of like they were grandfathered in. That kind of noisemaker is no longer allowed, but they get to do it because they've always done it, type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, so they got some kind of an exception because generally speaking, those kinds of noisemakers are not allowed.
Very
now,
true.
and that was at Mississippi State, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And who won?
Mississippi State, by 42-24. So it was
and
pretty solid
here's the
win.
thing. I mean, Mississippi State probably had the lowest recruiting class in the SEC last year, and who had the number 1 recruiting class?
A&M.
Exactly. I mean, Jimbo Fisher is a brilliant recruiter, just like he was at Florida State. But man, he does less with more. I mean, he does not have the data continues to accumulate that this is a guy that can't quite get it done unless he has a generational quarterback.
Yeah. I do recall watching the recap of that game. There definitely was a point where they were like basically in the red zone, ready to score, and then had a turnover. So they were kind of snake bit that game. It just felt like anytime they had anything go right for them, or basically everything went wrong. Like they missed field goals multiple times, I think, and stuff like that. So
what does that sound like? Does that sound familiar to you?
Just a bit. Like some corn.
So somebody's not paying attention to details, right?
Corn team I've heard of before.
Yeah, exactly. And then we got to talk about Oklahoma.
Oh yeah. Yep. Well, that was the craziest upset probably of the week, which was TCU destroying Oklahoma 55-24. And it was less than that. I think Oklahoma kind of got a garbage touchdown in the fourth quarter when the game was already over. I believe Oklahoma's quarterback got hurt in the second quarter, which probably affected their offensive performance. And then you watch these highlights, and TCU's players are just looking way faster than Oklahoma, breaking tackles or just outrunning their guys, right? They had tons of runs where they just sped off to the races, it felt like. An impressive performance from them.
I may have to watch that again because I'm going to tell you that Oklahoma's head coach, he was the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma. And so the Oklahoma fans will not they will not wait patiently. Let's just put it that way, because they remember this. And he basically got somewhat run off from Oklahoma's defensive coordinator because he had a tendency to have 1 or 2 games a year, every year, where an offensive coordinator would just get in his head. And he is such an aggressive defensive coordinator that he's aggressively blitzing and things like that. You get an offensive coordinator that gets into his head, and all of a sudden, you know, he's calling the perfect play every time that blitz is coming, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden, big play after big play after big play is happening, and Oklahoma would get blown out. And this was true when he was their defensive coordinator. Then he went to Clemson and became Clemson's defensive coordinator. Again, had great talent, was playing in the ACC, and had great success. Won national championships with Dabo, and built his reputation. And now was a good choice in all argument's sake for Oklahoma in the departure of Lincoln Riley. But he still has this Achilles heel, a little Bo Pelini-ish almost.
Right. Well, it's kind of that you live by the blitz, you die by the blitz, right? That kind of high risk, high reward type of strategy.
Right, exactly. And he's a very high strung, super intense guy. And when you start getting embarrassed like that and you start yelling and stuff like he does, as a head coach, sometimes that spirals out of control. And again, I'm going to use the Bo Pelini analogy. You know, his players loved him, but they were also scared to death of him, right? They feared his spittle and screams, right?
Right.
Where you would just get undressed in front of the national television audience. Well, we'll see how things play out at Oklahoma, but I have a feeling that they're going to have a pretty quick hook on this coaching hire at Oklahoma if it continues to go like it is, because he's not devoid of talent. That team had a lot of talent. And so this is an unacceptable result.
Right. Though they did have, obviously, a good bit of their talent from last year leave to go with Lincoln Riley.
Well, some of them did, but not all of them.
No.
And they recruited well. So, I mean, they still have way more talent than TCU. I'll just tell you that.
Right.
And yet TCU made them look foolish.
Right. Well, it was also a good week to be in Kansas because Kansas won over Iowa State 14-11, and then Kansas State, who we talked about quite a bit last week with our former quarterback Adrian Martinez, beat Texas Tech 37-28. So there you go.
Yes, and Adrian had another good game, I understand, from a statistical standpoint and that sort of thing. So he just continues to do well. I'll be curious to see if he stays healthy. Because that would be the other element of what was going on at Nebraska. And again, if you're asking him to do less, then maybe he doesn't get all the mileage, so to speak, that accumulates on him in the years he was at Nebraska.
Very true.
But that Kansas score is interesting, 14-10. That's some ugly football there. Well, 14-11.
Right.
That's some real ugly football there. I didn't watch that game. I probably need to maybe pull that up and see and watch the highlights.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to take a look at that one either. But Iowa State obviously coming off the loss to Baylor, and actually this upcoming week 6, they play against Kansas State.
Ooh.
So yeah, they've kind of had several tough games in a row here.
Well, and but I mean, right or wrong, that's the kind of stuff that takes the shine off of a coaching prospect, right? And so everybody was Matt Campbell this, Matt Campbell that as soon as we fired Scott. But since we fired Scott, he's lost 2 close games to Baylor and now Kansas. And now he's got to play a Kansas State team that's pretty well coached too, by a good coach in his own right. So it could very easily be another loss for Campbell. And so the highlight of his season at this point is beating Iowa.
Right.
For whatever that's worth.
Right. Well, I think it was the first time he'd done it, so I think it was a big deal for him.
Oh, it is. But again, I'm not holding Iowa up as the measuring stick.
Right. Talking about week 6, there are a few interesting games. In the Pac-12, Utah is playing against UCLA, number 11 versus number 18. So I think that should be a good one.
Wow. UCLA is ranked number 18.
Mm-hmm. Well,
wow.
I think I saw somebody saying that this has been the most upset prone season since 2007 or something like that. Just commenting on how many big upsets we've had, in the first half of the season so far.
Right, because UCLA won a big game this past weekend. We didn't even talk about it, where they upset. Uh,
They
who the
upset
heck did they play?
Washington.
Washington. They beat Washington. Yeah,
Hmm.
and so that's why they're ranked now. Because I don't think they were ranked last week. That's why I'm finding that a little surprising. That's that's surprisingly good news for UCLA.
Yep. And they're coming to the Big Ten, so there you go.
That's right.
Um, and we also have BYU is playing against Notre Dame, which should be interesting. They're the higher ranked team there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Notre Dame again struggling. We'll see how they are able to right the ship.
yep. Uh, and of course, there's the classic Red River shootout between Texas and
Oh,
Oklahoma.
it's yes, Red River Shootout. Thank you, Alex. Bravo.
So, yeah, see, I got it right this time.
You did.
Yeah. Texas, Oklahoma. Neither of them being ranked, which I'm curious when the last time that happened was. It is at home for Oklahoma, and I think despite I think I saw that Texas is the favorite actually in the betting odds. But I think I personally would still side with Oklahoma, especially since it's at home.
Well, wait a minute. Time out. You're misunderstanding the rivalry. This is the Red River rivalry, Alex, right? Or the Red River Shootout is the proper name. It will always be the name that I want to use. Um, it is always played at the stadium right on the Red River, or excuse me, it's always played at the stadium that is right next to the state fair. It's during the Texas State Fair every year, and so it's in Texas. It's always there. It's a neutral field. It's not in Austin. It's not in Norman. Now they do identify a home team each year because one of the teams has to be the host or whatever, but they switch it off every year for team colors and how the game is managed. But each team gets half the stadium tickets. Okay, so it's half red and half orange, right?
Right.
And it's always at, and I'm trying to think of where the state fair is. I feel like it's in Fort Worth, I believe. It's in the stadium that's in Fort Worth. Uh, but it might be in the Jerry Dome now in Arlington. Bottom line, though, is it's a neutral, quote, quote, neutral site. It's about the same distance from Austin as it is from Norman.
That's right. I had forgotten that, but I guess they're the hosting team then this year.
They're the
But
hosting
but
team, yes.
which doesn't really mean anything.
No, so home field advantage doesn't matter. Who's home and who's away doesn't matter. It's equal neutral ground, man.
Right. Well, regardless, I'm still going to stick with my prediction that I think Oklahoma will win, but I think it
Okay.
definitely could come down to the wire.
I'm gonna say I'll go the opposite. I could see the wheels coming off a little bit at Oklahoma, especially since you said their quarterback. Did their quarterback get hurt
Yes.
during that TCU game? So if they don't have that guy, I think their offense is in shambles. So I'm going Texas, and maybe comfortably.
Okay. I mean, this is the Texas that almost beat Alabama, so
Exactly. But it's also the Texas that lost to who was it that they lost to? I can't even remember now. But they've lost to didn't they lose to Texas Tech?
yes, I believe they did.
I think they did, and somebody else. So yeah, who knows what's going on at Texas? But I just feel like if Oklahoma doesn't have their quarterback healthy, and they are already clearly have some defensive issues, Texas is going to win it.
Yeah,
And I hate that. Trust me, I want Oklahoma to win that game.
yeah, you're right. They did lose to Texas Tech, but they beat West Virginia by 18 points this last week. Um,
Yeah.
so I am kind of reconsidering my prediction here. I have to
No, no,
admit.
no, 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 no. You stay with it.
All
Then
right, all right,
you can be right uh, again.
all right. Well, I'll go ahead and predict then that Oklahoma wins, and let's say it'll be 38-35.
And I'm going to say that it's going to be 45-31 Texas victory.
Okay, fair enough. And then another good game in the Big 12. They've had a lot of good games here in this portion of the season. We have number 17 TCU going against number 19 Kansas. It is at home for Kansas. I believe College Game Day is going to be going there for the first time in a long time, I'm sure. So it'll be interesting to see both teams coming off of good wins. TCU is much more of a blowout versus Kansas's,
Yeah.
which was down to the wire, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I was very impressed by what I saw of TCU in that game against Oklahoma. So I think I'm gonna lean their way, even though it's a away game.
You know what? I share your feelings. If you look at Kansas's, 5-0 start here, Iowa State is probably the best victory they've had, and that was kind of an ugly victory, right? They beat West Virginia about like what Texas did, and I don't know that West Virginia is very good this year. Otherwise, they haven't really played. They played Duke, Kansas did, but and they beat them. I just I look at TCU hasn't played very many big time teams either, other than Oklahoma. Now, beating Oklahoma the way they did, that sends a strong signal to me. So I'm going to have to go with TCU as well.
All right. So I'm going to say that TCU is very explosive on offense, like they were against Oklahoma, and they managed to win by, let's see here. Let's say 52 to 35.
Okay, that's good. Wow. Okay. I'm going to say it's going to be 42, TCU 42 points, and Kansas 28.
Okay. A little bit lower scoring, but I like it.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll have to see what unexpected upset we'll be talking about in the next podcast. It feels like every week we talk about the big games and then something else comes in and surprises us, takes all the headlines.
Right. Exactly. Well, it's been a fascinating year. I just think, there's again we've talked about this in off-season podcasts about the fact that the NCAA did this sport no justice, no support when they made so many radical, I mean, monumental, earthquake-shattering changes to the game in such a short period of time. If they had stretched these decisions out over a period of 10 years and done one at a time, let things settle out, and then do another one, and then let things settle out. But instead, they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater and just put caution to the wind and have thrown a bunch of shit over their shoulder. And I think that what we're seeing is the, random nature of how that has played out, and it's going to take a few years for that to settle in, and as teams and coaching staffs figure out how to navigate this new reality that they have to live in, and then you're going to start seeing who the haves and the have-nots are, who the people are that have figured out how to take advantage of this new structure, and the ones that aren't. And there's going to be some new winners and some new losers for sure, but it's mostly going to be the traditional winners and the traditional losers, and the gap is going to widen.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we'll have to see how it all plays out. To your point, I think someone from the NCAA were arguing that they were kind of forced into, making all these changes in a row, not necessarily because they wanted to, right?
Yeah, well, that's what. Yeah, oh, absolutely. They would point to the lawyers and say, our legal advice told us that if we didn't do these things, that we were opening up the organization to potential lawsuits that would have basically destroyed the organization. So we chose this path because of that. I'm sure that's what they would tell you in a quiet, honest moment where you couldn't repeat the answer. That it's driven by the lawyers and fear of lawsuits.
Right.
But I'm here to tell you that there were plenty of arguments to be made, but they didn't want to make them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, probably true. All right. Well, we here are certainly hoping that we'll be coming to you next week with another Nebraska W under our shoulders and some real momentum behind our interim coach, Mickey Joseph. And we'll have to see how the Kansas schools, I should say, do in this week 6 of college football, how the classic Red River shootout ends up going. So there's a lot to look forward to for next podcast.
Yes, absolutely. And we pretty much ignored our Big Ten slate this week. So hopefully, that will bring some interesting anecdotes as well.
Yeah. Well, probably the one I saw that was definitely worth mention is Michigan played against Iowa, won 27-14. Not a particularly remarkable score, but shows that Iowa was able to hang in there with a talented Michigan team.
Right. Iowa's defense is for real. Their problem is their offense is moderate to poor.
Right. Yeah, that is the problem. All right. So we hope all of you out there enjoyed listening to this podcast. You can email us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. You can also find us if you search for College Football Throwdown on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can leave us a rating or review there. We always love hearing from the fans. We can read your comments out on the air. So thank you all out there for listening, and thank you, Dad, for joining me. And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.